So, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim and Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. And inshallah, today we are going to continue the hadith or the ahadith that we did last time. And we went over a number of different ahadith and we stopped at this hadith. This is actually one of my favorite ahadith, so good thing that we're actually there. Let's see. So the hadith says, جاء جبريل عليه الصلاة والسلام إلى رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم فقال يا محمد عش ما شئت فإنك ميت وأحبب من شئت فإنك مفارقه واعمل ما شئت فإنك مجزي به واعلم أن شرف المؤمن قيامه بالليل وعزه استغناؤه عن الناس. Jibreel alayhi salam comes to the Prophet ﷺ and says, "O Muhammad, live as long as you wish, for at the end you will face the decree of death. And love whomever you will, for at the end you will depart and leave that person. And do whatever you may, for at the end you will be held accountable for it. And know that the mu'min and the believer's honor is in doing qiyam al-layl. And his honor is in being dependent and not in need of anyone." And we talked about the honor in sharaf al-mu'min compared to izz al-mu'min. So we said sharaf would more be of an honor, a rank in the, of course, in the face of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or in the a rank in where it's basically taking us that this is comparing it to all people. We talked about sharaf right there. And we talked about al-izz. And we said al-izz is to gain is to gain, yes, honor, but it's also to gain power. Al-izz is also power. Al-izz is also some form of not depending on others. That's al-izz. So we went in some details with that. And let's just look at some of the comments here. رواه الحاكم في المستدرك وقال صحيح الإسناد ولم يخرجه ووافقه الذهبي وحسنه الهيثمي في مجمع الزوائد والألباني في السلسلة الصحيحة. So let's look at الحاكم في المستدرك. What is المستدرك? Let me just give you an idea. Remember al-Bukhari and al-Muslim and Imam Muslim, they compiled the ahadith that were based on a number of different conditions. Number one, the conditions were really that they would be authentic ahadith, but that wasn't enough because you had Ibn Khuzaymah, you had Ibn Hibban, they also claimed that they were authentic too. But al-Bukhari had conditioned that the person would meet the other person or at least be within the same era. Imam Muslim, no, it wasn't enough. He wanted them to actually meet one another, and it wasn't enough to be during the same time. And of course, looking at each and every single person in the chain of narration, the hadith to match the hadith and the definition of an authentic hadith. What is the definition of an authentic hadith? ما اتصل إسناده بنقل العدل الضابط عن العدل الضابط إلى منتهى من غير شذوذ ولا علة قادحة. Let's write it down right there. ما اتصل إسناده بنقل العدل الضابط عن العدل الضابط or عن مثله. Let's just write عن مثله إلى منتهى من غير شذوذ. All right? ولا علة قادحة. This is right there. ما اتصل إسناده بنقل العدل الضابط. So in other words, we're looking at the chain of narration basically being connected. What does it mean that they're connected? That they actually met one another, and that was according to Imam Muslim. Imam al-Bukhari said, well, if he's basically saying that this is an authentic person, he's narrating off this authentic person, And we know that they had met based on what he is saying and based on what we would know, and we would basically look at each and every single person and their piety and their capacity and certainly their competence to basically repeat. We're talking about their ability to quote the exact quotes from the beginning of the chain of narration till the end. We need to look at each and every single person to be at this level of competence, religious competence, and even, let's call it, mental competence, all the way to the end of the chain of narration. And of course, we're going to be looking at other chains of narrations. We're going to be looking at other ahadith that others had narrated and basically do some form of comparison. We're going to scrutinize the words to make sure that this hadith really is not contradicting other chain of narrations, or at least other quotes that we found from other chain of narrations, and of course till the end. And when you look at this one, Al-Hakim, what he did, and that's why we're getting there, what he did, now you want to keep in mind that he was actually in the 5th century Hijrah. Al-Bukhari was in the 3rd century Hijrah. What Al-Hakim did, he said, well, I'm going to look and consider the same exact conditions for what makes an authentic hadith. And I'm going to basically get chains of narrations. They're not made up. He did his traveling, he did his research, and he would basically compile. He had the same exact hadith, but with chains of narrations that are the same conditions for al-Bukhari and Muslim, but some of those ahadith were not mentioned by Bukhari and Muslim. So that's why he called it al-Mustadrak. Al-Mustadrak actually means to, let's call it, commentary, to comment, to add an appendix. So that's basically what he had done. But not everybody agreed with Al-Hakim that it was really based on the same conditions, or at least not everyone agreed that he was at the same level of authenticity conditions that Al-Bukhari and Muslim were in. Well, here's somebody that said, well, I'm going to, instead of just disagree, I'm going to look at those chains of narrations. I'm going to reread and scrutinize every single narration, every single hadith. And for those that I would say, based on my research, that they actually have strong evidence and strong chains of narrations and let's say based on the conditions, I'm going to basically agree or disagree. So al-Dhahabi, who was actually an 8th/7th century scholar, he basically went over those ahadith, and whenever he found that, yes, this does match the condition for al-Bukhari and Muslim, and therefore, based on my scrutiny, I will agree or disagree on certain hadith. So he basically, that is al-Dhahabi. And just a note, al-Dhahabi is actually one of the students of Ibn Taymiyyah. al-Dhahabi, he's the scholar. Remember those volumes that I showed you, Sir A'lam al-Nubala? He's basically the author. Okay, that's al-Dhahabi. All right, al-Dhahabi, he was not Arabi. He was Turkmeni. What does it mean to be Turkmeni? From basically Turkmenistan. But guess what? Turkmenistan, or a lot of the Turkmenis, unfortunately, the colonization and colonizing powers disregarded a lot of their lands. But you want to keep in mind that these borders that we have today, they're mainly drawn by the colonizing powers. And certainly, like the Turkmenis, like the Kurds, like the Amazigh, many, their countries, or at least their presence, was purposely disregarded and left as if they are not there. They were purposely disregarded as a minority, even though when you're talking about the Turkomanis, they're actually equivalent to the population of perhaps we're talking about like Syria. You're talking about the Kurds. Their population is more than the Syrian population, but they were completely disregarded because, and I would claim that because Salah ad-Din was Kurdish, so it was a form of retaliation. 35 million Kurds living in, of course, in different countries where they're bordering certain areas, Syria, Iraq, certain parts of Iran, in certain parts of Turkey. You could see 35 million people where they have their language, they have their culture, they have all of that. All of a sudden, they found themselves with no country whatsoever, split in 3 different countries, and found themselves a minority in each and every single country. Well, why? Well, that was the colonizing powers wanting to disregard and completely just torture them and separate them in different areas. Why? In order to never have Salah ad-Din's power come back again. And this is important to keep in mind. It wasn't just, of course, it wasn't just the Kurds, but Turkomanis as well. Turkomanis as well, because Imad ad-Din Zinki was Turkomani. Well, who was Imad ad-Din Zinki? Without Nuruddin and Imad ad-Din Zinki, Salah ad-Din al-Ayyubi would not have been capable of doing what he had done. And this is important to keep in mind, that as an ummah, we support one another regardless of what nationality and what race we carry. Imad ad-Din Zinki was Turkomani. Nuruddin Zinki was Turkomani. Salah ad-Din al-Ayyubi was Kurdish. But they recognized that it's not an issue of what race we are, because we work towards uniting the ummah, not work towards uniting our race. There's a difference. Okay, let's continue. حسنه الهيثمي. Who's al-Haythami? Al-Haythami, Shafi'i scholar. Well, I want to keep you guys aware. When we're speaking about the different scholars, they weren't necessarily all the same madhab. Al-Haythami was Shafi'i scholar, and what he did in an 8-volume book, it's called Majma' al-Zawaid wa Manba' al-Fawaid. So there are some books we don't necessarily have the complete research, at least for them, like al-Bazzar, like al-Tabarani, like Ahmad, Musnad Ahmad, etc. So here we go. Our great scholar al-Haythami, in 8 volumes, he basically went over those narrations and Abu Ya'la and etc., and then basically did his study to see whether their men or the narration is authentic or not. All right. Al-Albani, on the other hand, we cannot dismiss this guy. This guy was originally from Albania, but he lived in Syria because his father fled Albania because he was worried about his children's deen. So Al-Albani was basically living in Syria, and while he was in Syria, well, his father wanted him to be a scholar in Hanafi madhab, but he became one of the leading figures in the Hanbali madhab. Al-Albani was a scholar that was, ladies, didn't even go to the kind of institutions and universities that we go to. He basically learned on his own. Listen to this. He learned Islam on his own, and later he would stay in the library for hours and hours just learning hadith and learning the chains of narrations to the point that the librarian basically just got sick of his presence every single day at the library. So he just gave him the key to the place. And he would stay there throughout the day and the night, just at the library and doing his research in hadith. Then he wrote all these very hard researching all those ahadith in a number of different volumes to they would almost get to almost 1,000 different research and different ahadith over, and we're speaking about volumes and volumes, whether we're speaking about السلسلة الصحيحة, السلسلة الضعيفة. السلسلة الضعيفة is in almost 13 volumes. السلسلة الصحيحة is almost in 13 volumes, and we're speaking about just different books that he would do, Sahih, Sunan al-Tirmidhi, and Taif, and etc. And okay, and certainly you're looking at all these books, and he even went over Bulugh al-Maram and went in details and scrutinizing, and the work that he was doing. If you were to look at the numbers, you know what? Maybe we could see Albani just to get to see Albani at least, right? Let's just see him and let's see what he looked like. So I don't want you to forget his image. Okay, let's look at him. Albani. That's the least that we could do. Albani. Okay, I want you to see him. Okay. This is a great scholar. Here we go. That's the least that we could do. This is al-Albani, right? This is al-Albani. Lived in Syria, like we said. Let's just see Kutub al-Albani, right? Kutub al-Albani. Let's see. Irwa al-Ghalil. Oh, this one was, this was probably the most book that I used to go to. Irwa al-Ghalil. Why? Irwa al-Ghalil, what he did an outstanding job. And I used to love it, Irwa al-Ghalil. Well, because what he did in that book, let me show you that book. Irwa al-Ghalil was probably the most book that I went to for hadith because it was so easy to go to. It was a lot easier than the Silsila Sahiha. Here we go. This is the Irwa al-Ghalil. And what I liked about the book, it was really easy to go to. And it was really just all those hadith that were related to fiqh because they were part of Bulugh al-Maram. And Bulugh al-Maram, here we go, Manar al-Sabil and Bulugh al-Maram, basically all the hadith that relate to all the Islamic rulings. So think of this. If a person were to study Irwa al-Ghalil, that's it. They got all the ahadith. If a person were to study, I actually thought of making like a series, just like we're doing Tafseer al-Qurtubi to do for Bulugh al-Maram, which inshallah, if I live long enough, I will inshallah do Bulugh al-Maram and the details of that. If you study Bulugh al-Maram, yes, it's in 4 volumes, but if they would study Bulugh al-Maram, you got all the ahadith that relate to fiqh, all of them scrutinized, all of them studied. There's no more. This is real. There's no more. This is all the hadith. All right. It's in 4 volumes, all the hadith. So inshallah, maybe one day we could research and study that. All right. So this is just Bulugh al-Maram. And just imagine the ilm that he had. By the way, everybody, this guy is actually a recent scholar. He died, I believe, 2001. Am I right? Think it was 2001. It was when I entered the university. for my undergrad, and everybody was talking about him. Our professors, here we go, 1999, our professors were talking about him, and I didn't know who that was. And yeah, so, and of course, he speaks in the Syrian accent because he lived in Syria. Okay, there were a number of different opinions that were rather, I guess, not the typical Hanbali. He had his own path. Okay, let's continue right there. Um, where's that? Is this a hadith? Yes, it is. Okay, let's continue with that hadith. Okay, so the other hadith, the Prophet ﷺ said, Inna dunya. Is this the hadith that we left off last time? Wait a minute. There was another hadith that I basically also wanted to do. Remember the hadith that talks about women? Where's that hadith at? Hope I didn't lose it. We'll find it somewhere, inshallah. Okay, let's continue. So this hadith, Inna dunya hulwatun khadira. وإن الله مستخلفكم فيها فناظر كيف تعملون فاتقوا الدنيا واتقوا النساء فإن أول فتنة بني إسرائيل كانت في النساء. Let's see the right there. الدنيا حديث ابن عبد الله بن مسعود. Indeed, the world is sweet and green. I want you to look at this one. This part about, yes, it's definitely a metaphor. Sweet and green, in other words, it's a metaphor. There are many beautiful things to find entertaining in this dunya. So when it says sweet and green, we're speaking about that it contains some of the things that Jannah contains, and some of the things that we also were created by our nature to seek and love greenery. Love nature, love greenery, love, of course, I wish I could just turn on the camera and just show you the beautiful view that I have in front of me. See the beautiful greenery, and certainly the water, nature, that's part of our nature. We feel there's some kind of a connection between us, our nature, because it basically rubs that this is part of you. So it's kind of like you're looking at the organic things that are in you, and without you realizing, there's something that you relate to when it comes to greenery, when it comes to water, then when it comes to, of course, even those that are going through some form of depression. Hey, you need some time to really spend out there in nature. Once you spend some time in nature, you could see that you went back to your own nature, to your organic self. So when the Prophet ﷺ tells us, Inna dunya hulwatun khadira, and in order for you to feel that sweetness, you really need to relate to the greenery. You need to relate to the nature. You need some time to spend in nature right there. So he said, Anna dunya, verily, indeed, the world, life, is it dunya to mean life? Is it referring to life? Or is it referring to whatever, let's call it the dynamic of life, whether we're talking about existence or whether we're speaking about the things that you would find in existence, perhaps nature, perhaps social relations, all of that. So it's basically talking about the whole dynamic of our own existence, plus, of course, the things that make our existence possible. خضرة, green. وَإِنَّ اللَّهَ مُسْتَخْلِفَكُمْ فِيهَا. And the Lord Almighty, let's see how they translated it. And Allah has made you stewards, so look how you act. Is that necessarily an accurate translation? Let's go back. وَإِنَّ اللَّهَ مُسْتَخْلِفَكُمْ فِيهَا. Where does that come from? Well, remember the ayah. وَإِذْ قَالَ رَبُّكَ لِلْمَلَائِكَةِ إِنِّي جَاعِلٌ فِي الْأَرْضِ خَلِيفَةً. Wait a minute. Take us back to that ayah. إِنِّي جَاعِلٌ فِي الْأَرْضِ خَلِيفَةً. قَالُوا أَتَجْعَلُ فِيهَا مَن يُفْسِدُ فِيهَا وَيَسْفِكُ الدِّمَاءَ وَنَحْنُ نُسَبِّحُ بِحَمْدِكَ وَنُقَدِّسُ لَكَ. wait a minute. We need to definitely go back to that ayah in order to see it and really see what the Prophet ﷺ, when he said, Inna Allah mustakhlifakum fiha, what does that actually mean? That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mustakhlifana, what does it mean to be a khalifa? Well, that's where we need to definitely go back to that ayah, because there's no way to understand this hadith if we don't actually understand what that word khalifa means, because the translation said stewardess. So I don't know, are we here on a flight, or what does it really mean to be stewards? Is this word right there giving it at least the right, or is it vicegerent? You would see other translations are going to translate it as vicegerent. Well, what is a vicegerent? Now you're going into jargons in English and in Arabic, definitely not making things easy. Well, let's go back to that ayah in order to make sure we're understanding things right. When your Lord Almighty told the angels, Inni ja'il, I am making on earth a khalifa. Here's a word. That's the same root, same word, khalifa, as the word mustakhlifakum. So what does that mean? Khalifa comes from the root khalafa. The root khalafa actually means to come after. So, in other words, they were basically told that there's another creation that's coming after another creation. Let's see what the malaika said. قالوا أتجعل فيها. They said, are you going to create within it ما يفسد فيها, who would cause a destruction, make and commit bloodshed, and we are glorifying you and glorifying and praising you. And وَنُقَدِّسُ لَكَ, and we're basically making everything that is sanctity and giving you the sanctity. قَالَ إِنِّي أَعْلَمُ مَا لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. I know what you don't know. So hold on. So the angels were here objecting? Absolutely not. Angels don't object. This is an inquiry. They're just asking. So I thought the angels don't have information. It's not that they don't have information. The angels cannot process ideas. In other words, they don't have the cognitive skills. They just do what they're ordered to do. So that's why here they weren't objecting per se. They were inquiring. So why did they assume that this new creature was going to cause bloodshed and cause destruction? Why would they assume that? This is a new, completely new, 100% completely new creature. Or is it? Is it a completely new creature, or was it a creature that looked like another creature? So in other words, what is called the Homo sapiens. Is it this Homo sapien? Is Adam alayhi salam the Homo sapien, and the Neanderthals, they looked like Adam, but they didn't have the capacity of Adam? This is possible. This is very possible. Because, well, why can't we say that this was the jinn? Well, the jinn doesn't have them. The jinn don't have blood. So certainly they were aware of another creature that was causing bloodshed. And certainly they confused this new creature, Adam alayhi salam, with the other creatures that were already perhaps looking like Adam somehow, but they were already causing bloodshed. They were already corrupt. They were already not equipped with the skill to think. So what is this creature supposed to be doing? So that's why they assumed, well, we're doing the job that any creature is supposed to be doing. So they said, نحن نسبح بحمدك ونقدس لك. We're doing the job. of glorifying you, worshiping you. In other words, what a Khalifa is supposed to be doing. A couple things. Number one, a Khalifa is basically supposed to be making sure and ensuring justice. But justice is not based on their terms, but justice based on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's terms. Number two, a Khalifa is supposed to be submitting to the Lord Almighty. So this is number one, and this is number two. So they assumed, well, we're doing the job, we're glorifying you, then what's this Khalifa for then? What are they going to be doing? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, قَالَ إِنِّي أَعْلَمُ مَا لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. I know what you don't know. So because they inquired, well, what does it mean that this new creature is going to come in? And we had already seen that they kind of look similar to other creatures. So here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, وَعَلَّمَ آدَمَ الْأَسْمَاءَ كُلَّهَا. He taught Adam the names of things. We're not talking about just a tree and an apple and all of that, but we're actually talking about the names of things, the function of things. In other words, there are certain things that he was equipped with in terms of knowledge to move on. And ثم عرضهم على الملائكة. Then he basically asked the malaika right there, told the malaika, exposed it to the malaika, and he basically wanted to test the malaika, or at least not test, because he knew what the malaika, because he created them, he knew what they were capable of doing. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted to answer the inquiry that they had put forward. What is this creature for? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, well, فَقَالَ أَنْبِئُونِي بِأَسْمَاءِ هَؤُلَاءِ إِن كُنتُمْ صَادِقِينَ. Well, tell me the names of things, إِن كُنتُمْ صَادِقِينَ. Why إِن كُنتُمْ صَادِقِينَ? They weren't denying anything. إِن كُنتُمْ صَادِقِينَ, to let them be able to recognize that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is أعلم ما لا تعلم. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala يعلم ما لا يعلمون. That He knows what they don't know. In other words, you might have some information based on what you had seen, but there are many details about what is inside the brain of this creature and what he's capable of doing and all of these things in the future of this creature, you don't actually know. And therefore, here in Kuntum Sadiqin, this is not to somehow challenge them, but this is basically to let them recognize what they had wanted to inquire about. That نُسَبِّحُ بِحَمْدِكَ وَنُقَدِّسُ لَكَ. Are you really committed to glorifying the Lord Almighty? Are you really committed to giving the complete sanctity to the Lord Almighty? So therefore, if you're really at that level, قالوا سبحانك. That's why they responded سبحانك. Why did they respond سبحانك? Because here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not telling them in kuntum sadiqin because they had inquired. He was like, in kuntum sadiqin, if you really committed to glorifying the Lord Almighty. So that's why they responded, قالوا سبحانك. They said, glory be to you, Lord Almighty. لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا. We don't have any information but the information that you had given us. Why? Because right there, they said, we don't really know. إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. Why al-alim al-hakim? You're all-knowing. And al-hakim, because when you order things, when you do things, you don't do it based on absurdity, but you do it with knowledge. You do it with all the information that is necessary towards leading a good cause. Let's do it again. Al-hikmah is not necessary to know what this is leading to, but al-hikmah is to know and to plan things in order to get to a good cause. A good cause is the emphasis here. Let's see. قال يا آدم. All right. Now to answer your questions or the inquiry, what and what is this new creature? قال يا آدم وأنبئهم بأسمائهم. Adam, now show them. Show them, of course, now demonstrate. Adam, tell them their names. فلما أنبأهم بأسمائهم قال ألم أقل لكم إني أعلم غيب السماوات والأرض وأعلم ما تبدون وما كنتم تكتمون. When Adam alayhi salam started giving the names of things and talking and basically now showing potentials that they were not familiar with. The other creature didn't have such capacity. This is a new creature with a new capacity where he's actually capable of talking. He's actually capable of naming things and capable of having and using some of that information in ways that we're not accustomed and familiar with. And that's when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Inni a'lamu ghayba. Ghayba. What does ghaib have to do with this? So then it's basically talking about the unseen. In other words, what you don't know is that this creature, there's going to be a purpose that they're going to be living to. This purpose, you don't know the whole parameters of this purpose, angels, but I'll tell you that because the Lord Almighty, He is the Lord, He basically is telling it to the malaika that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows غَيْبَ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ. So now you recognize the creature, but this creature's future and the futures of his offspring and the future until the end of times is basically all in the knowledge of the Lord Almighty. Whether the knowledge about the heavens, why samawat wal ard? Is samawat wal ard because the dynamics of samawat wal ard is basically what makes time and what makes place. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala let them know that not only is He containing the creature, but He's also containing the time, the place, and therefore His knowledge exceeds the time and place. So He knows the future, knows the past, knows every single place. وَأَعْلُ مَا تُبْدُونَ وَمَا كُنْتُمْ تَكْتُمُونَ. That's why He basically told them, well, now that you recognize مَا تُبْدُونَ, what you concealed in the past, and what you conceal in place. وَمَا كُنْتُمْ تَكْتُمُونَ. تبدون, ما تبدون, what you would reveal. تكتمون, what you would hide. What you would hide, whether in place or whether in time. Let's see. وَإِذْ قُلْنَا لِلْمَلَائِكَةِ. So now it goes into another chapter of the story. وَإِذْ قُلْنَا لِلْمَلَائِكَةِ اسْجُدُوا لِآدَمَ فَسَجَدُوا إِلَّا إِبْلِيسَ أَبَى وَاسْتَكْبَرَ وَكَانَ مِنَ الْكَافِرِينَ. When we had told the angels to prostrate for Adam. So how did we get from this right there to making sujood? But Iblis wasn't even part of the angels, was he? Or was he part of the angels? Oh, well, the order for prostration was directed at the malaika. Well, that's directed at the malaika, and they're considered the high rank. Iblis was from al-jinn, not from the malaika. But if the malaika were ordered and they were considered, think of it as a class where we would have A students, we would say, hey, I want you to study for class or for the test. Well, that doesn't mean a D student is going to make it without studying. If I'm telling the A students to study, well, that means you are supposed to be, you're supposed to be basically the first to study. So here, إِذْ قُلْنَا لِلْمَلَائِكَةِ اسْجُدُوا لِآدَمَ فَسَجَدُوا إِلَّا إِبْلِيسَ. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ordered the malaika to do the sujood. Why? Because they're supposed to worship Adam? No. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is ordering them to do it for His sake. For whose sake? For Allah's sake. So the real worship is for Allah, not for Adam. فَسَجَدُوا إِلَّا إِبْلِيسَ. Iblis was the only one. Refused to prostrate. Why not? أَبَى. Rejected. Refused. وَاسْتَكْبَرْ. Istakbar. Was basically letting his arrogance go up. Why? Because in another ayah, he said, well, you created me. خلقتني من نار وخلقته من طين. I have better organs. I have better material that I'm made of. I'm fire. He is made of different organisms, and therefore I'm at a higher rank. What did he consider himself? considered himself that I have better qualities. Therefore, I shouldn't be the one prostrating for him. He should be doing that for me. And that's the same thing. You could see that arrogance, thinking yourself as having better qualities, intelligence, probably better coming from a better society, better maybe a race, whatever it is, you would think of it that way. وَكَانَ مِنَ الْكَافِرِينَ. And that's because he did not prostrate as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ordered him, and وَكَانَ مِنَ الْكَافِرِينَ. And he was amongst those that were al-kafirin, those that denied Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now I want you to look at the other one. قُلْنَا, here goes chapter 3. قُلْنَا يَا آدَمُ اسكن أنت وزوجك الجنة وكلا منها رغدا حيث شئتما. Here comes this same hadith, and we had told Adam, uskun. What is uskun? Uskun can mean to dwell, and uskun can mean that there is a certain thing that you would find tranquility in. أنت وزوجك. Tranquility also comes with one, a place of stability, a place where, in order to bring about stability, he also needs a wife. Husband, wife, marriage is to help us get the stability. وَزَوْجُكَ الْجَنَّةِ. And we also need the greenery. So here we go. You're going to live in al-Jannah. And وَكُلَا مِنْهَا رَغَدًا حَيْثَ شِئْتُمَا. You're going to eat as you wish. You're going to dwell in this Jannah. وَلَا تَقْرَبَ هَذِهِ شَجَرَةً. But there's one particular tree don't want you getting close to. Not even close, not even close. Not only do not eat from it, but don't get close. فَتَكُونَ مِنَ الظَّالِمِينَ. Well, what is the tree for? Why out of all the things, why a tree? Why not do something else? Because it's part of your own nature that you feel that you want to contain something. So that's where, of course, it was to let Adam know that there are different things that do look similar to what you would eat from. They would look similar, and in other words, it can be an area of manipulation where you would think that you've got the analogy and confuse the different areas and think that you could do your own analogy in comparing the items and you can get there. Well, Adam alayhi salam definitely had his confidence in his intelligence. So let's see. فَأَزَلَّهُمَا الشَّيْطَانُ. Who comes in to, let's say, test his commitment and basically come in and somehow manipulate Adam alayhi salam? It was a shaitan. What did he do? أخرجهما مما كان فيه. Got them out of what they were in. Wait a minute. He just got them out? Well, the story then takes you into, kind of like takes you into another thing. Well, what happened? How did he get them out? So that's when the ayah basically tells us what happened. What happened in another ayah, basically, قُلْنَا اهْبِطُوا بَعْضُكُمْ لِبَعْضٍ عَدُوٌّ. And he told them, well, what happened? How did they get out of it? Well, that's because in another ayah, it tells us that they had actually eaten from the tree. But how did they eat from it? Why did they eat from it? Because shaitan comes into them and tells them, well, I do recognize that part of your nature, that you basically live to seek a form of stability, a form of containment, a form where you want to feel that you are going to live long enough and you're going to contain the world and that you want security. So what did he do? He basically convinced them. How? He said, أَوَلَا أَدُلُّكَ عَلَى شَجَرَةِ الْخُلْدِ. A tree that would make you live in eternity. وَمُلْكٍ لَا يَبْلَى. Mulk la yabla. Why mulk? Because it's part of your nature that you're seeking some form of property, some form of containment, because to you, it's part of your psychology that the more you contain, the more you own, the more secure you would feel. وَمُلْكٍ لَا يَبْلَى. In other words, if you're going to have a property that is going to be eternal, ownership that's going to be forever, ownership that's going to contain everything, then that would mean that you yourself will be contained. So, what did he do? Did Adam believe him? No, he didn't. What did he believe him? قَاسَمَهُمَا. Shaitan basically swore by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now what did he do? He swore by Allah. He literally said, Wallahi. He said, Wallahi. And then he believed him. He believed him when? When he used a religious appearance. When he used a religious appearance. And that's what you want to keep in mind. A lot of the manipulation comes in a religious appearance. You want to be really careful. Even those that are magicians, those that are politicians, they're dressed in suits. And they look very professional, but they're the bloodthirsty. Fir'aun. What did he say? He said, إِنِّي أَخَافُ أَن يُبَدِّلَ دِينَكُمْ أَوْ يُظْهِرَ فِي الْأَرْضِ الْفَسَادَ. Mr. Fir'aun, he was basically presenting himself. إِنِّي أَخَافُ أَن يُبَدِّلَ دِينَكُمْ. I worry, I'm afraid, I really seek to make sure that your principles, the civilization, and the ideas that made our civilization be possible are preserved. So what did he say? I'm really worried that Musa will come in and change the principles that founded our great civilization. Or he might bring about destruction. Wait a minute. Fir'aun, Mr. Fir'aun, remember? You were the one that was killing the children and killing the little kids and all of that? Well, remember, that was justifiable because we needed to make sure that our great civilization is continuing with no threat coming its way. So he managed to manipulate the society. So the best way to present yourself that you're a person of justice is to somehow continue speaking about justice and that you're there in their favor and not in his favor. And that's the same thing. They went into the war in Iraq and they said, oh, we're here just making sure that Saddam Hussein is not going to be using weapons of mass destruction. And we're here just to make sure that we're securing the American and the Western countries' freedom. And what do? Well, they basically go and attack Iraq, attack Afghanistan, attack, those different countries. Well, that's exactly the shaitan way to basically confuse the masses that you're committing injustice. The easiest way is to basically say you're protecting justice. So that's what shaitan did. Basically, qasamahuma, presented himself as a person of integrity, as a person of piety, and a person of religion. And this is extremely dangerous. You want to keep in mind. Well, this doesn't mean that a person that doesn't have a religious appearance is not necessarily in posing any danger or any threat on your iman. Certainly not. They're showing it as straightforward. But the other one is hard to identify. So you want to be really careful. That's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was telling you to seek ilm from the resources and beware of such motivational speakers because they can, in Arabic we say, دس السم في العسل. What does that mean? They would basically include, it would be honey, but they would put within the honey the venom. Because venom is usually bitter. So by putting it in honey, you're letting the sweetness basically cover the bitterness and you won't be able to recognize it. So you would gulp it all up. You will basically taste the sweetness and not recognize the bitter venom, poison that is in it. Let's continue. فأزلهما الشيطان عنها فأخرجهما مما كان فيه. أزلهما. What is it, أزلهما? This actually takes us to another ayah in Surah At-Tawbah, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, فَتَزِلَّ قَدَمٌ بَعْدَ ثُبُوتِهَا. What does that mean? Let's go back really quick. We're going to jump into another ayah. Okay? This is important because we need to actually فتزل قدم بعد ثبوتها. We're going to look at this ayah for a bit. Let's see. I said Surah Al-Nahl, Surah At-Tawbah, it's actually لئلا تزل قدم بعد ثبوتها. Okay, let's see. Right there. Let's look at those. What happened? Okay. ولا تتخذوا أيمانكم دخلا بينكم فتزل قدم بعد ثبوتها وتذوقوا السوء بما صددتم عن سبيل الله ولكم عذاب عظيم. What happened? Well, the munafiqeen were actually doing all those ayman. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I want to look at this word right here. فتزل. What is الزلة? الزلة is not necessarily a real fall. But izalla is basically a slip. When you're going up the ladder and going up and up, guess what? The higher you go up in the ladder, the weaker the ladder becomes basically from the base. Why? Because the higher you go up, of course, the base was the strongest area. And then when you go up, you become, of course, more susceptible to falling. Why would you become more susceptible to falling? Well, because the base was a lot easier to hold on to. But then when you go up and higher up, and that's where, look at that one. فَتَزِلَّ قَدَمٌ. This is a metaphor. فَتَزِلَّ means to slip. In order to slip, a qadam, a foot, for a foot to slip after it was strong and sturdy and basically steadfast on those steps. وَتَذُوقُ السُّوءَ بِمَا صَدَدتُّمْ. And then you would taste السوء, the evil of what you had basically got and what you had done and basically committed, where you had gotten people out of the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَلَكُمْ عَذَابٌ عَظِيمٌ. But I want you to focus on this one. فَتَزِلَّ قَدَمٌ بَعْدَ ثُبُوتِهَا, which actually is coming with the same exact root. فَأَزَلَّهُمَا. They slipped, both of them. الشيطان فأخرجهما مما كان فيه. Shaitan got them out of what they were in. In other words, what they were in. What were they in? They were in ni'mah. They were all those blessings. وَقُلْنَا اهْبِطُوا بَعْضُكُمْ لِبَعْضٍ عَدُوٌّ. Then what happened? Is it بَعْضُكُمْ لِبَعْضٍ عَدُوٌّ? Is it Adam and Eve? Or is this بَعْضُكُمْ لِبَعْضٍ عَدُوٌّ? Adam and Shaitan. That's more preponderant. بعضكم لبعض عدو, Adam and Shaitan. And that's now Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala letting Shaitan know that you're there. Be careful from letting this manipulation fool you in any way. But you are seeking a form of stability. You are seeking some level of, it's part of your nature that you're seeking somehow security. You're seeking stability. You're seeking somewhat of containing your future. It's part of your nature that you want to get kids, you want to create family, it's part of your future. You want to get a job to make sure that you have enough food and enough water. You want to, it's part of your nature that you want to stay healthy because you don't want to die because you're afraid of death. It's part of your nature to basically, strive to be fit, strive to basically survival. It's part of your nature, just as it's also part of the animal nature. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is basically letting us know, وَلَكُمْ فِي الْأَرْضِ مُسْتَقَرٌ. On earth, you've got everything that is going to keep you contained. وَمَتَاعٌ إِلَى حِينٍ. You'll be able to live to a certain time of mut'a, a certain time of dwelling, a certain time of living to a certain appointed time. Each and every single person basically has a different حين, has a different appointed time. فتلقى آدم من ربه كلمات فتاب عليه. Adam عليه السلام basically got then the revelation. All of this that happened before, that was not when he was a prophet. فتلقى آدم من ربه كلمات فتاب عليه. Adam then got a revelation. The Lord Almighty, of course, what did he do? Adam عليه السلام basically seeked repentance from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, asked for forgiveness, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had given him and accepted the forgiveness. فتلقى آدم من ربه كلمات فتاب عليه إنه هو التواب الرحيم. But here's one thing. So yes, the Lord Almighty is a Tawwab is a Rahim. Why? Because he accepted that for the forgiveness that you wanted in the repentance. But there was one thing. Chapter 4. قُلْنَا اهْبِطُوا مِنْهَا جَمِيعًا. Go out, you're not going to be in this Jannah. جَمِيعًا, all of you and your offspring. But here's one thing. I want you to recognize a main theme in this dunya. فَإِمَّا يَأْتِيَنَّكُم مِّنِّي هُدًى. If you were to receive a revelation, who's that? قُلْنَا اهْبِطُوا مِنْهَا جَمِيعًا. Well, here, فَتَلَقَّى آدَمُ رَبِّهِ كَلِمَاتٍ فَتَابَ عَلَيْهِ. This is Adam alayhi salam. But then, of course, قُلْنَا اهْبِطُوا. This is chapter 4 here. What happened? Well, this is talking to his offspring. This is directly speaking to who? Speaking to the people that came after Adam alayhi salam. Now, all of you are out of that Jannah. فَإِمَّا يَأْتِيَنَّكُم مِّنِّي هُدًى. If you were to receive a guidance and a revelation, فَمَنْ تَبِعَ هُدَايَ. If you are to seek the revelation, you are to hold on to it. فَمَنْ تَبِعَ. What is the word tabi'a? Tabi'a means to follow the steps. Here's one step, you're basically following another, and you're basically taking the trace after the trace, one foot after another, basically trying to find the right path. فَمَنْ تَبِعَ هُدَايَ. You follow the guidance of the Lord Almighty. فَلَا خَوْفٌ عَلَيْهِمْ وَلَا هُمْ يَحْزَنُونَ. Then you would not find fear, and you would not find depression, sorrow. Well, wait a minute. Why is that even related to huda? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows that what shaitan will use in order to get you to follow him is to tell you and to scare you and to tell you that if you don't follow his way, that there's going to be a really bad consequence. If you don't take riba, you're not going to be able to find a job. You're going to get poor. If you don't engage in those relationships and you don't present yourself as pretty and sexy to the guys, they're not going to be attracted to you. You're not going to find a mate. If you don't basically present yourself in a certain way, and you're not going to fit in, you're just going to lose your social acceptance. And if you don't go through this degree and that degree, oh, that's the end of your future. There's no hope. You have to do it that way. And if you were to not eat these things, you're really going to struggle. You really need something to help you somehow feel better. So you really need a sip of, alcohol and here and there sometimes to kind of make you at least, spiritual, if you know what I mean. Yeah, that's the shaitan speaking. And that's the way that shaitan, he'll basically get you into khawf and get you into huzn, and will use different names to change the narrative to make it presentable. So liquor is spiritual drinks. That way you'll feel not guilty about it. And certainly, in order to talk about those that are presenting themselves in this illicit way. Oh, it's basically a person that is living free. A person that is living freedom. We're changing the narrative. And a person that's basically going for zina, they're enjoying their life. What are they doing? Enjoying their life. And a person that's basically going for riba and going through, oh, they're really successful people. What are we doing? We're carrying the same narrative as Shaitan wanted to carry. And the main reason and the main way that Shaitan will use as to manipulate us is basically to scare us. If you don't apply it this way, you're going to get doomed. You're not going to get success. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling you, no. Actually, if you were to follow al-huda, that's what is going to bring you security, and you're not going to face fear, and you're not going to face al-huzn, sadness and sorrow. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling you that your path through guidance is what's going to secure what you were created to look for. All right. Now, taking us back, and that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala goes and continues about Bani Israel, of course, for those that are, of course, الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا, that not only will they face fear and they face sorrow, but they will on Judgment Day, they will also have النار. And that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala goes in details. يا بني إسرائيل اذكروا نعمتي التي أنعمت عليكم وأوفوا بعهدي أوف بعهدكم وإياي فارهبون. That's why he goes in details about Bani Israel and tells them, remember, I basically had blessed you with what blessing? Well, the blessings of sending you a revelation. And that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was basically presenting all of that in that surah. But that's where, of course, it is connected where the Prophet ﷺ was basically giving us that application. وَإِنَّ اللَّهَ مُسْتَخْلِفَكُمْ فِيهَا. For the Lord Almighty is basically going to make you the Khalifa. Why did he say that? Well, that's because he wanted you to recognize, keeping in mind the ayat. And he said, فَاتَّقُوا الدُّنْيَا. So be careful, be mindful of that dunya, so it won't take you and get you carried away. فَاتَّقُوا الدُّنْيَا. And what's the scariest thing about dunya? اتقوا النساء. Be careful from nisa, women. Why women? Why are we the evil people here? Well, it's not that we're evil people, but the Prophet ﷺ was directing his words at men. So he was telling them, فَاتَّقُوا النِّسَاء, be careful, because there's something, of course, inside of you that's always wanting women. Well, that's the same thing if we're talking about women. If we're directing the words at women, we'll tell them فَاتَّقُوا الرِّجَالَ as well. If we're talking to women, we'll say, ladies, be careful. And many women will be confused. And why are you always so focused about hijab? Why are you always talking about hijab like it's the main thing? There are other important things. And I'll say, I agree. Hijab wasn't revealed till probably 18 years after the revelation of Islam. I agree that that's not a pillar in Islam. I won't debate on that, but I will keep you aware where when the Prophet ﷺ was telling men ittaqun nisa, I would also say the Prophet ﷺ, if he's telling the men ittaqun nisa, he's also telling the women ittaqur rijal. He's also telling the women, be careful, because it is part of your nature that you seek their attention, that it feels good that the man is complimenting you, that he's talking about how beautiful you look, whistling right there. It basically lets the woman feel she's wanted, she's important, she's somehow beautiful, because it's part of your own psychology that you want the social acceptance, and especially if the social acceptance is coming from men. Why? Because it feels that, yes, he's going to give me what I want. He's the place of security. He's the place of basically entertainment. He's the place that that I'm looking for. Of course, when women dress up, they don't dress up for women. They would dress up for the men mainly, just to present herself to the men. That's why dressing up in a way to really present, of course, the physical areas, at least that are attractive for certain, you know what I'm talking about. Ladies, we know what we're talking about, don't we? And we know why sometimes we would wear a certain type of a garment in order to present certain things. And that's why the Prophet ﷺ said for the men, ittaqun nisa, and for the women, certainly, ladies, don't let your, let's call it your nature in seeking attraction and seeking that acceptance get you carried away from your deen. That's the same thing. It's a main slip. I know hijab is not a pillar, but hijab is going to be a key thing to help you redirect your focus. That's why we would speak about hijab. It's redirecting your focus from considering your body and considering the men and considering people as your place of attention to considering your heart and Allah as your place of focus. So if you're living constantly, we're talking about, yes, of course, it takes a lot of time to find the clothes, the right matching clothes, of course, the right makeup, the amount of money that we would pay for the makeup, for, of course, appearance, for the hair, and the list goes on and on. And certainly a certain type of a name brand to bring about a good presentation that you are not poor and that you belong to a certain social status and so forth. It takes a lot of your time, your energy, your focus. And later on, the implication is going to be it's taking you away, your identity. It's letting your identity be in their hands and not your identity within yourself. How does that happen? Let's look at that ayah. We're going to go back to Surah Al-Ahzab. How did you get into identity and why are you even talking about identity? How is that related to anything here? Let's go back to Surah Al-Ahzab for a bit. We're going to go back and actually see that ayah. And why was it relating it to identity? So you're going to go back to Fatir right there. This is supposed to be Saba. And let's go back to Surah Al-Ahzab for a bit. What are we at? Let's see. With Surah Al-Ahzab. And the ayah. And inshallah. And hold on. Where's that ayah? It's going to be at the top of the page. All right, here we go. Let's see. Where am I jumping in? Don't worry, we're going to find it, inshallah. And it's supposed to be ayah 59. Let's go to ayah 59. Why did I just not make it easy right there? And there we go. Let's look at it. Here we go. Are you seeing the page? Yes. Let's look at this ayah. يا أيها النبي قل لأزواجك وبناتك ونساء المؤمنين يدنين عليهن من جلابيبهن ذلك أدنى أن يعرفن فلا يؤذين وكان الله غفورا رحيما. O prophet, tell your wives, your daughters, the believing women. Why believing women? Because there's no way that you could really embrace this unless you are striving to be a believing woman. يدنين عليهن من جلابيبهن. يدنين عليهن من جلابيبهن, to basically cover and fasten those garments. ذلك أدنى أن يعرفن فلا يؤذين. For that is in order for them to be known. Wait a minute, to be known? To be known for what? فلا يؤذين, and not to be harmed? How are they going to get harmed if they're going out in public if they're not wearing the jilbab? Well, ذلك أدنى أن يعرفن, so that they would be known for the identity that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is their place of focus. They're women of principle. They're women of taqwa. They're women of hishma. They're women of modesty. They're women of what? Of La ilaha illallah. They're women that would regard Allahu Akbar as their main focus. So when we look at right there, ittaqun nisa, the hadith that we were just doing, and here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling you, listen, hijab is an identity. Is an identity to let other men know that you're a woman of principle and not a woman that is basically a product for them. فلا يؤذين, because it's part of a man's nature that he basically sees in you the beautiful flower that he would want to pick. Let's just leave it at that, because you're the man's place of joy. You ask any man, what's the most beautiful thing in dunya? He's going to say women. Of course. Even the Prophet ﷺ actually said that the most beautiful thing in dunya that was love to me is women. Any man, even if it's a prophet, he'd say women. There's nothing more beautiful than women. And ladies, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling you, yes, ذَلِكَ أَدْنَى أَن يُعْرَفْنَ. Be careful. Stay with that identity of iffa, of bashfulness, of that you're a woman of Allahu Akbar. فَلَا يُؤْذَيْنَ. And that way, so you won't be harmed, not internally and not externally. فَلَا يُؤْذَيْنَ. So that way, the man that is coming forward internally, you won't be harmed. Why? Because you're not then put down and somehow losing your confidence that you're not pretty enough. You're not the size. You're not this. The list goes on and on. You're internally losing your confidence. Externally, of course, they might actually try to, who knows, try to flirt, etc. And then you would think that, oh, it's giving me acceptance. No, he's basically only wanting you as a substance, as an object. That's not giving you acceptance. That's using you as a substance. Two different things. Using you as a substance, once he's done, he's basically ready to just give you up. Literally. وَكَانَ اللَّهُ غَفُورًا رَحِيمًا. Why غَفُورًا رَحِيمًا? Ladies, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is most forgiving, most merciful. Go back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Embrace the identity. Why is that important to embrace the identity? Because by embracing the identity, you're basically right there redirecting your focus, redirecting your vision from a vision of dunya to a vision of akhirah, from a vision of you being a tool to you directing the goal is al-akhirah. Why was that even the case? Well, that was because al-munafiqeen, they were basically وَالَّذِينَ فِي قُلُوبِهِمْ مَرَضٌ, and many had diseases in their hearts. What were they basically doing? Well, they were basically wanting to abuse the situation, and they were harming al-mu'mineen and al-mu'minat, and they were basically trying to harm the ummah. By using who? By abusing women. So let's see. So he said, وَاتَّقُوا النِّسَاء. So ladies, here the Prophet ﷺ is also saying, وَاتَّقُوا النِّسَاء is basically telling also the women, اتَّقُوا الرِّجَالِ. Be careful. Dunya, for dunya, إِنَّ اللَّهَ مُسْتَخْلِفَكُمْ فِيهَا فَنَاظِرٌ كَيْفَ تَعْمَلُونَ. You're going to be tested in it. فَاتَّقُوا الدُّنْيَا. Be careful from dunya. It's going to be a slippery slope. وَاتَّقُوا النِّسَاء. فإن أول فتنة بني إسرائيل كانت في النساء. The first fitna of Bani Israel was in women. Let's continue this hadith. Hudayfa ibn al-Yaman. Now you want to look at Hudayfa ibn al-Yaman. Hudayfa ibn al-Yaman was considered the Sahabi that basically had the names and a special consideration for knowing al-fitan. That's what he loved to know. He was a person that always wanted to know what fitan are going to happen in the future. There are some people that are obsessed with that. It's actually good. And that's why all in majority, not all, most of the ahadith that relate to the signs of Judgment Day, they're basically narrated by Hudhayfa ibn al-Yaman. Hudhayfa ibn al-Yaman was rather interesting. One, the Prophet ﷺ tells him the name of al-Munafiqeen. Two, Hudhayfa ibn al-Yaman, he was asking the questions that no one would ask. Quite smart. Everybody would ask about the good things. He would ask about the bad things. Not because he wanted to do it, but his explanation, if I'm going to be avoiding the evil things, then everything else is fine. As long as I'm keeping away from the wrong things, which is a really good logic, it's a really good analogy. And you could say, let's say, and Hudhayfa ibn al-Yaman, he said, the Prophet ﷺ had said, مالي وللدنيا إنما مثلي ومثل الدنيا كمثل راكب استظل تحت شجرة ثم راح وتركها. What did he say? That the Prophet ﷺ said, what do I have to do with this world? Or with this dunya, with the different entertainments, everything. My example and the example of this world is like that of a traveler who sought shade under a tree, then went on and left it. Oh, that's really similar. It was mentioned that Prophet Nuh alayhi salam, when he was asked, I don't know how authentic that hadith is, so don't take don't take it as necessarily authentic, but it was mentioned. I don't have the level of authenticity for that hadith, that he was asked, how does it feel to have lived 950 years old? And he said, well, it's like you're sitting under a tree, and then once, of course, the shade goes away, you just walk off. Yes, in other words, it's right there, very momentarily, very temporary. Let's go on with another hadith. Abdullah ibn Umar. Who's Abdullah ibn Umar? Abdullah ibn Umar ibn al-Khattab. Umar ibn al-Khattab was the Khalifa. Abdullah was his son. Abdullah ibn Umar was known for being keen on practicing sunnah. He was always wanting to be committed to sunnah. He said that the Prophet ﷺ said, كن في الدنيا كأنك غريب أو عابر سبيل. That the Prophet ﷺ said, be in this dunya as if you're a stranger or a person that's passing by. What does a stranger do? I must admit, for myself, living here in Malaysia and leaving everything, of course, well, from owning a house in the US and giving everything away. It just let me know, because we're here, of course, the country doesn't give you a long-term visa. So you would know that you're not here on a long-term. So you gotta keep yourself low-key in terms of what you have. So you would see a couple kitchen items, a couple, I guess, a couple, pieces of clothes, a couple, just a couple things. You don't want to buy too much because you know that you're not going to take it with you, and it's going to be abir sabil. So we're here abir sabil. So sometimes that's one good thing about traveling. You learn that this hotel stay, all right, even though it's not a hotel that I'm living in, but this hotel stay is very temporary. So don't take in too many things. Even if you are to stay, just keep everything low key and don't necessarily stack too much, because that's going to affect your, your heart. The more you stack, the more you would connect with dunya. In other words, go look into your pantry. If your pantry has all these snacks and your closet has all these different garments, then you are a person of dunya. Cut down on the snacks. Cut down on what your pantry has. Cut down on what your closet has, and you'll see you're giving up on dunya. Feel كأنك عابر سبيل. You have to feel that you're just passing by, that you're just a traveler. When you're a traveler, there's not much to carry because, of course, you could only carry 50 pounds and maybe one luggage, two luggages. That's basically it. Not much to carry. And if you carry more, you're basically going to pay more. And that's the same thing. You carry more of dunya. It's not just on flights, but that's the same thing in akhirah as well. You carry more of dunya, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will ask you more about things. What did you do with the chairs? What did you do with the cars? What did you do with the money? What did you do with all those TVs? What did you do with all those things that you had in your pantry? What did you do with all of that? Because remember, when the Prophet ﷺ had actually said that you were going to be asked about one, in al-qabr, about your wealth, about your, basically, your life, shababak, about your young and youth age, what did you do with it? About the ilm, what did you do with the ilm? The knowledge, what did you do with it? How did you live your life? And that's where, of course, it takes us to the other hadith. Yes, the Prophet ﷺ was telling us that just like you're going to be asked, the same thing. Hey, you file your taxes every single year, right? And they'll ask you, well, let's say you're doing all these schedules on your taxes, 1099, W-2, we're gonna determine where this income is coming from, how much did you spend, and what did you spend, and where's this income, of course, coming from, and of course, especially if you're self-employed, then we're going to see how this money is basically going to be spent. We need receipts. We need to make sure that you're not committing any fraud. If you're spending this money on, I guess, growing your business, then would like to see evidence. Well, that's the same thing. Even if you're right there, even if you're traveling, how much money are you carrying? Is it above $9,999? All right, sign this paper. And if it is, do you have your tax statements that you can carry this amount of money? Yes, we'd like to see it. That's what they'll basically tell you. How much cash are you carrying? How much gold are you carrying? What is the value of it? That's the same thing in al-akhirah. Boom, right there. That's the same thing in al-akhirah. The more dunya you have, the more you'll be held accountable. How much cash did you have? How much money? What did you do with it? Where is it coming from? The income, where's it coming from? How did you get this income? How did you spend it? And the list goes on and on. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will ask you not only about the money, will ask you about the time. What did you do with your time? You had 24 hours per day. Okay, this much for sleeping. Let's dismiss that. How much time was used in order to work, make and create your income? How much time did you spend in doing other things, and etc. And the age when you were most vibrant in it, your youth age, what did you do with that? And certainly, you're looking at the Prophet ﷺ taking us into, so that you could be prepared. عن ابن عباس رضي الله عنه. And you could see the previous hadith was actually narrated in Bukhari. Let's see this hadith. عن ابن عباس رضي الله عنهما قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم لرجل وهو يعظه اغتنم 5 قبل 5 شبابك قبل هرمك وصحتك قبل سقمك وغناءك قبل فقرك وفراغك قبل شغلك وحياتك قبل موتك. The Prophet ﷺ said, take advantage of 5 before 5. What is the 5? Your youth before your old age, your health before your illness, your wealth before your poverty, your free time before your busy time, and your life before your death. Just straightforward. Why? Because those are the most important things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had given you. It's basically relating, look at that, relating to time. You've got the time. يا ابن آدم إنما أنت أيام كلما ذهب يومك ذهب بعضك. O son of Adam, you're just a few days old, or a few days. Every single day, a day passes. Part of you had passed. Simple and straightforward. So what should I do? Well, you've got certain potentials. A potential during your youth age, make use of that before you start getting old. In other words, make use of it, whether probably in investing, probably in your social relations, making it for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Perhaps your ibadah, because soon you're going to start seeing that your body is not going to be capable of handling ibadah the same way. Your body is not going to be handling all the different stresses out there. Your memory is not going to be able to handle that. And your memory is going to start getting lost. Your body, your energy is not going to stay the same. Your time is not going to stay the same. Your ability to understand the world is not going to stay the same. So use your energy, use your power for the things that will lead you to Jannah before it's late. صحتك قبل سقمك. Your health before you get ill. If you're healthy now, well, make sure you use it for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. غناءك قبل فقرك. And غناءك, your wealth, because your money is not going to stay forever. If you've got the money, use it to get to Jannah. You got your youthhood, use it to get to Jannah. صحتك, your health, use it to get to Jannah. فراغك, your leisure time, your free time, use it to get to Jannah. You've got all these different keys. حياتك, use it, your life, use it to get to Jannah. You've got all these potentials. Be aware of those potentials before you basically lose it. And same thing you could see Ibn Abbas. He said that the Prophet ﷺ said, نعمتان مغبون فيهما كثير من الناس الصحة والفراغ. There are two blessings that many people are deceived about or deceived by, or maghboon, or it could also be maghboon to mean that they're envied for, they're lucky to have health and free time. You got these two? Well, you've got everything. Use it to get to Jannah. Inshallah. I didn't know that I had mentioned this hadith. Look at this. عن أبي برزة الأسلمي قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم لا تزول قدم عبد يوم القيامة حتى يسأل عن عمره فيما أفناه وعن علمه فيما فعل وعن ماله من أين اكتسبه وفيما أنفقه وعن جسمه فيما أبلاه. The feet of the servant will not move on day of resurrection until he's asked about his life, how he spent it. In other words, time. About his knowledge, what did he do with it? About his wealth, where did he earn it from and how he spent it? And about his body and how he used it. In other words, redirecting our vision, these ahadith are giving us the keys, the potentials that we may not, especially if we are young, that we may not realize that we have. We may not realize our youth age. We may not realize our mind and intellect and what we could use with it. And we may not realize our wealth, and we may not realize our health and our body and what we would need to use in order to get to Jannah. So what should we do? Well, it's redirecting our focus and be careful with, of course, losing your focus and without you realizing, and especially women. The Prophet ﷺ said, قمت على باب الجنة فكان عامة من دخلها المساكين. I was basically standing at the doorway of al-Jannah. The Prophet ﷺ right there during al-Isra wal-Mi'raj, just watching who's going to go to Jannah. He said most of the people that were entering Jannah were al-Masakin, were the people that didn't have really money, they didn't have a lot to be asked about. They were basically living low key. It was really simple. They didn't have a lot of money to be asked about. So it was, hey, kind of like the taxes. Oh, this person doesn't have a lot of income, not much. They'll basically have a couple papers. You're all set. That's it. You're all done. But if a person has a lot of money, oh, the more money, oh, we're going to get to Schedule C, and we're going to get to, putting more and more schedules, and we're going to get more and more. And of course, sorry, you could see I'm getting close to the tax time, and I'm already already, I guess, just concerned about it. Okay, let's see. فكان عامة من دخلها المساكين. Also, those that were entering Jannah were مساكين. وأصحاب الجد محبوسون. And those that had the wealth were kept. It's like, stand, you've got a lot to be held accountable for, just wait. غير أن أصحاب النار قد أمر بهم إلى النار. But the people of hellfire, they were taken and ordered, go to hellfire. نسأل الله العفو والعافية. وقمت على باب النار. Stood at the door of hellfire. And فإذا عامة من دخلها النساء. Most of those that entered hellfire were from women. Ya Allah, نسأل الله العفو والعافية. You look at that. This hadith, let's say, Al-Hafidh ibn Hajar mentioned this, let's say, this hadith right there. Okay, here we go. Okay, Al-Bukhari and Muslim. So this hadith is in Al-Bukhari and Muslim. I was looking for this takhrij and I was like, why didn't I mention it? Here it is, Bukhari and Muslim. So ladies, when we look at فَإِذَا عَامَّةُ مَنْ دَخَلَهَا النِّسَاء, just be careful and just know that we're more susceptible to fitna, that we're more susceptible to the different manipulations. Because why? Are we not using our life? Are we not using the knowledge? Are we not using our wealth? Are we spending too much on just gaining social acceptance rather than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Are we using our body for the akhirah? Are we using our body to somehow gain some form of acceptance? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is basically, or the Prophet ﷺ is basically right there telling us, ladies, عَامَّةُ مَنْ دَخَلَهَا النِّسَاء, be careful. Most of the women are going to enter hellfire. So just make sure. And I would really recommend, ladies, we're very social beings. We're a lot more extroverted than men. And because we're very social beings, we may not recognize sometimes that by making a lot of these friends, it can be a place of fitna. I'm not saying don't make any friends. I'm not telling you to be introverted. No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm basically saying be selective in who you surround yourself with. Make sure the people that you surround yourself with are the salihin, because they're, in neuroscience, they'll tell you that there are certain neurocells that basically would mirror whatever you're surrounded by or you're surrounded with. So if people around you are crying, your brain is going to trigger that you have to cry too. If everybody is laughing, even though you may not know what everybody's laughing about, your brain is going to laugh too. It's going to tell you you have to laugh. If everybody is doing a particular thing, you basically feel that you need to fit in. So our fitna as women, because we're very social beings, we tend to be more susceptible to mirroring the people that surround us. We tend to seek, of course, others to think on our behalf because we even lack confidence. The people that are seeking social acceptance, they lack confidence in them, in their abilities, in themselves. Why? Because they're seeking other people to accept them because they think that people are doing the right thing and that they need to fit in, and they want other people to approve what they're doing. Only a person that lacks confidence is waiting for others to approve them. And that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was, remember that ayah when we did in Surah Al-Ahzab? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, ذَلِكَ أَدْنَى أَن يُعْرَفْنَ فَلَا يُؤْذَيْنَ. What يُعْرَفْن? To be that you're a confident woman in your deen. That you would be known that you're a woman of confidence in your deen. You're a woman, you're confident about yourself. This man that's out there that's trying to somehow tell you, hey, beauty, nice legs, or whatever it is, that to you means nothing. Why? Because you're confident about yourself that you don't seek no person on the street to somehow give you the compliment. You know exactly who you are. You know exactly what you carry. You know exactly what you live for. La ilaha illallah. So when you look at that, you connect with it. What do? We're just letting ourselves just know, well, why عامة من دخلها النساء? We're susceptible because, well, how come we are held accountable for something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created within our nature? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created within men's nature to love women and within your nature to love men. It's part of your nature. It's part of your nature. At the same time, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told you to be careful of it. Remember the ayat that we were doing in the beginning? وَإِذْ قُلْنَا لِلْمَلَائِكَةِ إِنِّي جَاعِلٌ فِي الْأَرْضِ خَلِيفَةً. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was also telling you, here's the Prophet ﷺ is also telling you, hey, you've got certain things that are part of your nature, but just make sure you use it for the right cause. It's part of your nature that, yes, you basically look at the ayah, الرجال قوامون على النساء. This is an informative clause. What does that mean? It's basically telling you of something that is also part of you. الرجال قوامون على النساء. And it's part of your nature. Just like it's a man's nature to feel his own masculinity, to somehow be the leader, to somehow be the tough guy, to somehow prove his power, prove his authority, all of these different things, all right? It's part of your nature that you seek a person that is a person of power, a person of authority, a person of course, in a good way, a person of security, because to you, you recognize your physical weakness at least. And that's why you seek security through the man. You seek, yes, man, six-pack, muscles, etc. All of these. Why? Because to you that demonstrates power. And with power, you would basically feel that that's what you're seeking. A man of power. A man of power also means a man, not only physical power, but social power. Men with money. Another type of power, status. Yes, has a degree, PhD, master's, doctor, whatever it is. Why? Because to you, as a woman, you're seeking that. And it's part of your feminine nature that you seek a man that has more than what you have. So a woman, and that's why most women that are educated, they are more likely to not get married. Why? Because they've got the different potentials, and certainly they're looking for someone that has a higher potential. Believe it or not, when I was doing matchmaking, this is real, most of the women that were coming forward to sign up were actually PhD holders. Masters and PhD holders. They were looking to get married. And believe it or not, the men, when we would tell them, hey, this is a woman, has a PhD in pharmacy or whatever it is, no, I'm not interested. Why? Now, the feminist rhetoric is going to say, because he's afraid of women. No, he's not afraid of a woman. He's not afraid of her. It's not like she's going to beat him up at the end of the night. No, that's not what he's afraid of. But it is part of his nature that he wants to feel his manhood. So if this person is going to, I guess, somehow compete and be a rival, that's not what he's seeking. He's got too many rivals on the street, too many guys rival that are competing with him on the street. That's not what he's looking for. He's looking at something that will secure his nature. Same thing for a woman. If I were to tell this PhD holder that, hey, I've got this candidate that has a bachelor's degree in such and such. No, he has to be more educated. And then we would confuse a degree, a college degree, and we would think that that represents understanding. A college degree doesn't represent an understanding. A person can have a bachelor's degree and be a lot more, or at least a lot wiser than a person that has a PhD. In fact, somebody that probably didn't even have wallahi, a high school diploma can be a lot wiser than a person with a PhD. Life is completely different than the degrees that you might actually have. And that's the same thing. Someone might not have the greatest income, but actually be a person of wealth in value a lot more than the person that probably has, a certain amount in their bank statement. And this is important to keep in mind. Real and true values are really what you carry on the inside and not what you carry on the outside. But at the same time, to go back to the same point, it's part of women's nature that she also wants a person that would give her security, a person that would make her feel that she's basically capable of nesting with a person that is going to be protecting her babies. That's part of her nature. That is part of her nature. And certainly, subhanAllah, and yes, it's part of our nature, but certainly as women, many times, we sometimes lose our place and confuse our, let's call it, tool and goal, and we end up losing ourselves. So ladies, when you look at that ayah, الرجال قوامون على النساء, it's part of your nature. That ayah is basically telling you it's part of your nature. But make sure when you want to find this person, make sure that you really seek a person that is qawwam, a man that is of principle. A man that is of principle actually means a man, there's no way that he's going to be a principle if he's not of a person of principle with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He has to be committed in his deen. That's a person of principle. That's why the Prophet ﷺ said, إِذَا جَاءَكُمْ مَنْ تَرْضَوْنَ دِينَهُ وَخُلُقَهُ فَزَوِّجُوهُ. A person of principle is a person of centered around Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's a person of principle. In the khuluq, somebody can be religious, but not necessarily a person of akhlaq. Then definitely look into the character to make sure that this person really has the good character to help you maintain family, maintain and get to stability. So we really need to learn a couple things and what actually makes a good potential candidate, what makes a good a husband, what makes a good wife. Same thing, the Prophet ﷺ said, تُنْكَحِ الْمَرْأَ لِأَرْبَعٍ. And women basically chosen for a number of different things. Yeah, their beauty, their progeny, yeah, she's basically coming from a certain social status, beauty, she's beautiful, etc., and money, but فاظفر بذات الدين تربت يداك. The most important thing, take the deen, because everything else wears off. تربت يداك. Everything wears off. The beauty wears off. She was so beautiful when she was in her young age, and once she got old, all that, the size started changing, the weight started coming in, the baby marks started coming in, and her body started changing. What happened? She was completely different. Yes, she was completely different. Of course. It wore off. That's time. That's age. That's reality. So what remains? الدين. The deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is it. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نستغفرك ونتوب إليك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت. But I would love to hear what you would want to say. We started late, so that's okay. A couple more minutes, inshallah. I would love to hear what you would like to say in regards to those ahadith. Teach me and teach us. Go ahead. You can unmute yourselves. Is that رقية الأسود or رقية الأسود?
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. لا، رقي الأسود.
رقية الأسود حبيبة قلبي. رقية الأسود, where are you from, dear?
أنا يمنية في أمريكا.
حبيبة قلبي تحية لأهل اليمن. الإيمان يمان والحكمة يمانية. إيش بدك أكتر من هيك؟
شكرا. حياك الله.
حبيبة قلبي الله يرضى عنك يا ربي. All right. So what would you want to comment on the ahadith? Tell us what inspiration you got from these ahadith and inspire us. Anyone? Everybody is quiet. We can stop and no one wants to be on the microphone. That's okay. I can stop the recording. I can see everybody's not comfortable with it.